Hello again. I'm Pastor Paul here at St. Andrew Lutheran of Canyon Lake, continuing the series on the encounters with the risen Christ. And there's one more here that was on that short list as I've done some informal polling of favorite stories of Jesus' resurrection. The one with Thomas in it is popular, and maybe you've already noticed. I'm titling this just Thomas. It does have, these last couple centuries anyway, a name. This story has been called Doubting Thomas. I think there's more to it than that. A simple story is, the evening of that first Easter, 10 of the disciples are in one place and they encounter Jesus. For whatever reason, Thomas isn't there. They tell him, he replies, "I won't believe until I have touched his wounds in his hand and his side. I can't believe until I have seen and touched." So a week later, in the evening, they're gathered again, and this time Thomas is with them. And Jesus says, "Thomas, here, come, look, touch, and believe." And Thomas cries out, "My Lord and my God." So, I just want to start by saying, doubting Thomas probably isn't fair. That moniker for him. You know, he's reasonable Thomas. We might call him that. Reasonable Thomas. It's normal not to believe things we haven't seen. That's one of the questions we have to get at as we figure out what's the whole purpose of these resurrection encounters. It is normal not to believe things we haven't seen. When my kids become teenagers, I will not say to them, "Okay, whatever your friends tell you is true. You should just accept that as true and act accordingly." No, that is not what I will tell them, right? So when Thomas says, "Hey, good for you. You saw this, you believe it." I'm not there. In some sense, he's being reasonable. And in some sense, he's being the same Thomas we saw back in John 11, who, when Jesus is determined to go back to Galilee and they say, "Oh, they were just trying to kill you. We can't go back there." And Jesus says, "Well, we're going." Thomas turns to the others and says, "Well, then let us go with him that we may die with him." Thomas is not going to sugarcoat things. He is not one for euphemisms, right? This is reasonable Thomas. And he says, "I can't believe." Now, usually when we discuss this story, we say, okay, Thomas needs evidence. But there's a lot of evidence he could have chosen. He could have said, until I talk to him and ask him, "Now, what city was it where you turned all that water into wine? What town were we in?" Or any number of things. What's my nickname? Thomas the Twin. Anything like that. He could have said, "That's the evidence I need to know this is Jesus and he's really risen." That's not what he picks. He picks the wounds. And again, I see reasonable Thomas at work here. Because he isn't going to let, resurrection would be great, but you can't undo what I saw when Jesus, my Lord, was put on a cross. There were wounds, right? There was violence inflicted. And what he won't accept is resurrection is a false alarm. Oh, yay, all that didn't happen. He knows that happened until he sees the wounds. Then he knows he has a Savior who is crucified and risen. And it's the two together that the church has always seen, believers through all the centuries have seen the power that he is both crucified and risen. Thomas chooses the wounds. Well, then Jesus shows up. Well, first of all, I love that it says, "And Thomas was with them on that night." That's a pretty significant thing to disagree about, whether or not Jesus is risen. It's kind of a big deal. And yet they live in that tension, and Thomas is welcome. Questioning, maybe unreasonable, he's welcome. He's with them on that night when Jesus appears again. How do we live in that tension with others and with those we love and care about? Then Jesus comes and gives Thomas what he needs. He says, right, "I know what you've been saying, Thomas. I know what you need. Come, touch my side, touch my hands." It doesn't say Thomas did it. I think it's a fascinating possibility that Thomas in that moment doesn't need to touch it anymore because he sees the Jesus who knows him. Because all it says is he cried out, "My Lord and my God." And there's a movement, I've called him Reasonable Thomas. There's a movement to call him Confessing Thomas, because here Thomas says the most profound, the most extreme theological claim you'll find in any of the Gospels. He calls Jesus my God. Not you are the Christ, the Messiah, the Holy One, or even the Son of God, my Lord and my God. And then Jesus chides him a little. He says, "Have you now believed because you've seen? Blessed are those who have not yet seen and have come to believe." And here's the crux of it, right? Because here we are in that category. Whenever we read these resurrection encounters, we say, "Oh, if only I'd been there." Never mind how scary or disconcerting or confusing it might have been. We say, "Oh yeah, then I'd have my evidence." This is all about those who will come after. And these 40 days of person to person, touching each other, speaking with Jesus, eating and drinking with him, the whole point of that is to have some witnesses of a certain type who then share this. So many, many, many more will come to believe and can become witnesses in their own way. So it takes us full circle. I wanted to share a verse from 1 Peter. 1 Peter chapter 1, starting in verse 8. "Although you have not seen him, you love him. And even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and rejoice with an indescribable and glorious joy." Several places in the New Testament make it clear. The point of all of this is so that we who come later can come to believe and have encounters with the risen Christ of a new kind through faith. So Thomas is a great story for that, both because we can relate to him in so many ways. The tension with his friends, the needing to experience it for himself. And in this story, we see he gets what he needs. And Jesus makes it clear that all of this is for you and me too, and everyone else who's come after and will come after us. So some new things maybe to think about as you remember and give thanks for Thomas and Jesus' encounter with him.